Good evening, everybody. I used to this microphone here. I'd like to welcome everybody to our open public forum. Tonight the topic will be natural and synthetic turf field systems. This is not really a debate. I can't stress it enough. It's an information session tonight. So we want to address concerns and a lot of optimism as well as we look out for the best interest for the kids and everybody. Quick introductions. My name is Ed Hake. I'm the Westerly Rec Board Chair. We have Paul Duffy, Town of Westerly Recreation Director, Bill Aiello, Town Councilor and Rec Board Liaison, Diane Bowdy, Westerly School Committee, Mike Moonen from Weston and Sampson, Gene Bollinger from Weston and Sampson, and we have many school committee members and many town council members and future members as well. So thank you all for coming tonight. So I'm pretty passionate about this subject and stuff just because we really look out for the kids in this town. But this isn't just about the kids as I go forward with it. We're looking at everybody in town, including the kids all the way up to some of the elderly, and creating some more recreation programs. As you may already know, over the last year and a half, we have developed a master plan for our recreation fields. We have already taken some small steps to improve our facilities. In order for us to improve them further, we need to address Ojiri Field and the quad. During the master plan process, we conducted 3 public meetings and our online survey to get as much information from the public as possible. This was all in creation of our master plan. After listening to many residents who asked for more information, we are pleased to pull together this forum on natural and synthetic turf systems to help provide the facts associated with both. If you have had a chance to walk the fields, physically walk the fields, I urge everybody to walk the fields. A lot of the coaching staffs are on them every night. Really, please just physically walk the field and not just from the bleachers. It's a huge impact. You'll truly understand our urgency to address various field conditions. Whether it's poor drainage, uneven playing surfaces, or wear and tear, we need to provide a safe and reliable playing surface for our students, our student athletes, our band members, who, if you guys saw, were WPRI's Band of the Week last week. Congratulations. And all members of the community that use our fields over the course of the year. Our constant mission on the rec board is to create opportunities for people of all ages to enjoy active and passive recreation. Improving these fields will help us to attain that goal. Weston and Sampson was hired by the Recreation Board as a consulting firm that specializes in recreation and athletic fields. Tonight, we welcome all questions and concerns regarding this topic. Please keep in mind, again, this is not a debate. This is a public information session. We really want to address questions. All of our questions will be asked after the presentation tonight, so please hold off on your questions, but we encourage a lot of participation afterwards. That's about it. All the questions afterwards will be right up at the podium. Everything is taped, live streamed tonight, so we need to be on microphone with it. So I thank you all, and please enjoy the presentation.
Okay, great. Ed, thank you very much. Everybody can hear me okay? Sometimes I don't do terrifically well with microphones for some reason. I have a tendency to use my hands when I talk. It comes away from my mouth. So this is kind of like a high school class, and you know what that means. That means we're going to call on the people on the way back first. And probably the people on the sides. You people in the front row, you're safe. We're not going to trouble you tonight. But we'd love to hear from you. And just picking up on what Ed said, we have some information that we'd like to present to you on this topic. And then I think it's more of a dialogue and a listening session, and for all of us to get a better understanding of what people think about, in particular, the implementation of synthetic turf fields. And I wanted to talk a little bit about, just so you have some context in regard to who we are. And Weston and Sampson is an environmental engineering firm. We have been New England-based since 1899, so that's a long time, about 119 years. And we have about 550 people. We have 6 practices within the engineering firm. I'm a vice president in the firm, and I manage one of those 6 practices. And I'm trained as a landscape architect with a master's and a bachelor's degree in landscape architecture. Michael Moonen is also trained as a landscape architect, a Rhode Island resident. And I've spent the better part of the last 30 years working in this realm. And Mike has been working at it for about 20 years, and we've been working together for about 15 of those, I guess. And, you know, a couple of other notes as we delve into this. We are working on a couple of dozen projects like this at any given time. We actually have 24 landscape architects on our team. We have engineers on our team. We have some architects on our team. And the focus is on designing improvements to municipal park, open space, sports, and recreation systems. That's what we do. When we get up in the morning and we go home at night. We have done nothing but work on initiatives exactly like this. And I would say that in the vast majority of communities that we're working with in Rhode Island and Massachusetts, and in fact throughout the Northeast, because we do work in the 6 New England states and New York, there are similar conversations that are ongoing. So I'm not trying to hurt your feelings by saying that you're not unique. You are unique because it's a great community in so many different ways, but you're not unique in the sense that this is a dialogue that happens in every community that's contemplating the installation of a synthetic turf field. And it's because, you know, people pick up bits and pieces of information, and a lot of crazy information is available in a crazy fast sort of way through the internet. And a lot of times people will formulate opinions without having a complete understanding of the matter at hand. So of the couple dozen projects that we're involved in at this moment in time, you know, they range from a modest renovation of a softball field up to a high school sports complex. So for anywhere from a couple $100,000 up to, we have a project out to bid right now that's about $10 million worth of sports and recreation improvements, and includes a combination of natural turf fields and synthetic turf fields and courts and other types of outdoor recreation facilities. Many communities, in order to address significant increases in usage, which actually is really a great and wonderful thing. If we can encourage people of all ages to be more active and to make use of a municipality's sports and recreation facilities, that's really a great thing, because we're all trying to encourage people to maintain healthy lifestyles. Usage in lots of sports has surged, and usage in sports that weren't crazy popular a number of years ago are also surging. So in particular, we see the number of girls and women that are participating in sports to be increasing almost across the board, which is great and wonderful. We see shifts to multi-purpose rectangular shape football activity facilities in the form of lacrosse. And forgive me, I actually don't know about Westerly, but you know, other things such as ultimate frisbee, rugby, things that you didn't hear a lot about, you know, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, need to make use of rectangular sports field venues. And folks even my age and older making use of facilities. We have lots of folks who are in the 50 and above age bracket who are playing in adult softball leagues, and they're playing a couple of times a year. So the fact that a lot of communities, because of this surge in popularity of sports programming, have come to realize that their inventory of field assets is not sufficient enough to maintain them in a good state of repair and to provide facilities at a level that might be expected or desired to support this expanding interest in outdoor sports and recreation activities. So I think that covers a little bit about us, if you will, so that you have some confidence that we're not new to this, that we're immersed in this, and we're helping communities exactly like Westerly with conversations exactly like this. So, and I have to say that we don't have, in a sense, a dog in this race in regard to whether ultimately a city or a town chooses to go with synthetic turf or natural turf. We have recommended that to many of our municipal clients that they consider synthetic turf as a way to attack the deficit in typically multi-use rectangular shaped sports playing fields that many communities possess. And that would allow them to provide facilities that perform at a higher level. Because if you introduce a synthetic turf field into the equation, that allows you to accommodate 2, 3, even up to 4 times the level of use on that footprint, which allows you then a fair chance of maintaining the remaining natural turf fields in a higher and better state of repair and performing better and safer for the users who are playing on those natural turf venues. So we have probably half a dozen projects now that do have a synthetic turf field component associated with it. If we had the luxury of unlimited land and unlimited budgets, wouldn't it be nice for everybody to play on an absolutely pristine natural turf field? But it's simply not reality. And I dare say that most communities the size of Westerly and larger, where that $10 million project I just mentioned is a community of 13,000 people. And they have 2 synthetic turf fields that are part of that bid, and they have natural turf fields that are part of that bid too. But in New England, we tend to be land poor, and the weather is getting trickier and trickier to predict. And we seem to lose more time in the spring and the fall, where it's really critical to have the facilities performing at a high level due to poor weather conditions. I dare say September of this year has been really tricky for most municipalities in regard to their natural turf fields. Because we're getting rain, not every day, but we're getting it 2 inches, and then it's taking days for field venues to dry out. So we're going to go through these slides very quickly. I just wanted to disclose that we're invested heavily in natural turf field systems. And the majority of fields that we do are still natural turf field systems. But we do a significant amount of synthetic turf fields. On the upper left, these are fields in the city of Worcester, Massachusetts. They're spectacular natural turf baseball fields, softball field, and some multi-purpose footprints that were deployed within a city park that accommodate a state university and city programs. And on the right, a typical high school complex that included a track, a synthetic turf field, and all the accoutrements that go along with that. Mike, if you want to go to the next one. And then natural turf in this image too. And you know, the renovation strategy can run the gamut from something that's almost an extremely ambitious maintenance approach to something that's a really expensive and comprehensive capital project approach. But a couple of facilities, natural turf facilities, before photographs on the left and after photographs on the right. One of these fields is in Coventry. One of these fields is at Blackstone Valley Regional Tech. Next slide, Mike. And again, a slide showing some images of some synthetic turf fields. Another misnomer is that you can put a synthetic turf field in and you're good to go for 12 years. Well, that's not the case. You need specialized equipment. You need folks that are trained in maintaining synthetic turf fields. It may actually come on an annual basis at a lower price point than a natural turf field. But there certainly are maintenance protocols that are required, and it's important to attend to that so that a synthetic turf field is always performing at a high level, and it's safe for use, and it's retaining its resiliency qualities, and so on and so forth. So just some images of some synthetic turf field projects that we've been involved in, including the casting of the infill into the carpet in that image to the lower right. So this is the agenda tonight. A few more words about natural and synthetic turf systems, some specifics about your potential facility improvements at Westerly High. We're going to talk about high-performing natural turf system components, the basic elements. And this isn't just 6 inches of loam and seed. You know, to get a really high-performing natural turf field, it's a highly specialized, highly engineered root zone mix that needs to be put in at a significant cost to support turf growth, maintenance, and a high level of performance for various usage. We're going to talk about the various components that make up a synthetic turf system. Infill, that's the topic that you hear lots of chatter about because there's a variety of different types of infill material. The one people have most commonly heard about probably is crumb rubber. We're going to talk about crumb rubber a little bit, and we're going to talk about some other infill options in addition to that. And we're going to highlight what we know about concerns we have heard about synthetic turf field systems, and specifically the infill material that is used in the synthetic turf system. We're going to talk about the toxicology. One of the things that causes us to feel we're fortunate is that we have a tremendous amount of technical resource at Weston & Sampson. I mentioned we're an environmental engineering firm. So we have water quality experts, we have toxicologists, we have civil and structural engineers, we have civil engineers, we have soils remediation experts. We have all sorts of experts that can be brought to bear on a project like these. And these tend to be complicated projects where you need more than just a team of landscape architects to develop the bid specs and oversee the installation of these types of systems. And we have those resources in our company to call on. And then we're going to have a conversation. We're going to listen to you folks and respond as best we can. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to Mike. And Mike, you're going to work through about a dozen slides.
Yes. So tonight I'm going to run through the different types of systems. And as Gene mentioned, we're not here to recommend either type of system. We're just here to give you the parameters of each one, some different options on synthetic turf, and then again, as he mentioned, to just address some of the concerns, mainly with synthetic turf systems. So these are the 3 basic systems. There are variations on the theme on each one, but on the left is your native soil root zone mix, and it's probably what most of the athletic fields are here in town. It's basically 4 to 6 inches of loam on top of your subgrade, and it's very prone to compaction and is pretty difficult to maintain. The next one is a sand-based root zone mix, high performing, as we say. I'll get into the details of that one further on in the presentation, and then the last one is the synthetic turf system. So this is the Westerly High School field. It's a field you're considering the different options on, as well as the quad next door. So this is just a potential high school field usage. Today you don't have a synthetic turf field, so we couldn't use actual usage from Westerly, but this is a typical usage from a high school. So you can see with all the programming on a synthetic turf field, you could get around 2,000 hours of use on the facility. And then that's, again, being able to extend it into the fall and also start to play on it earlier in the spring. Whereas a natural turf system, you would play on that 400 to 600 hours a year. You may be able to stretch that to 800 with a really high-performing root zone mix and extensive maintenance. So this is the high-performance natural turf system components. It's actually, as Gene said, we put in a lot of these types of fields. This is actually my preferred system. Like he said, if we had our druthers, we would put in beautiful natural turf systems throughout. So this is a pretty intensive system where the root zone mix is actually a sand-based root zone mix. It's 8 to 12 inches of that root zone mix. And then underneath it, you put a gravel drainage layer, and then also with the drainage pipes. It allows the water to move through it very quickly and away from the field through the drainage system. The sand-based root zone mix allows the field to be played on about an hour after a rainstorm, which is not generally the case with your standard loam fields. The other thing it does, it really encourages deep root zone growth because the water goes down through it so quickly. You get the water down towards the bottom, so the roots seek the water. And once you get the deeper root zone mixes, the deeper root zones, it's the better chances for that turf to survive, especially in the hotter climates. So the pros and cons of the natural turf field. The benefit is that its initial cost, it's cheaper to construct and replace and resod. The playability can be limited by weather. You get a lot of rain, or you get you get an early winter or a late winter. It's very difficult to play on these fields. The higher maintenance costs, if you really properly maintain it, talking about resodding, worn areas, aeration, slit seeding, the maintenance costs can be pretty extensive. Again, it's the limited playing time, and in order to keep a field in really good shape and safe, you should only play on it 400 to 600 hours per year. Then again, also a con is actually that native soils may contain elevated levels of various metals, carcinogens, etc. You have to test native soils, especially if you're going to reuse them, because a lot of our native soils contain lead and various other metals. The environmental impacts related to improper maintenance. If you don't maintain the field properly, it becomes very hard, which I think you've experienced in some of your fields. There's a lot of runoff from hard fields. And also, if you don't maintain it properly and you over-fertilize, you could get runoff from the fertilizer, creating issues in the nearby water bodies. It requires irrigation for proper turf maintenance. In this day and age, the amount we play on a field, if you do not irrigate a field, you're going to have very poor turf quality. This is the synthetic turf system. This is the basic historic system, if you will. You have your subgrade below, and then under that you have a stone drainage layer. It ranges from 8 to 14 inches, depending on how much stormwater storage you might need under the field. And then there is just a backing system on the turf where the actual turf fibers are stitched into, and then there's an infill in the turf. There are varying types of infill, which I'll get into in a minute. Pros and cons of synthetic turf fields. There's more playing time. As I mentioned in the chart earlier, it can support a higher intensity of use and extend the playing season. Some municipalities even clear the snow off their fields and play well into the winter and then earlier in the spring. There's a less intensive maintenance program, but contrary to some beliefs, there is a maintenance program, and if you don't keep that up, your field could get damaged very quickly and also become unsafe. It conserves water. You don't have to water a synthetic turf field. You would wash it down once in a while and either use a hose or put in a permanent system in order to wash it for proper hygiene on the fields. There are fewer injuries on a properly maintained field because the GMAX performance, that's one of the main things on athletic fields is concussions. and a properly maintained synthetic turf field helps prevent that. There is a higher initial cost. It's more expensive to build, repair, replace. However, due to the amount you're allowed that you can use it, it has a lower cost per hour of use. A synthetic turf field costs about $30 to $50 an hour, whereas a high-performing root zone mixed natural grass field costs about $80 to $100 an hour, and then a basic loam root zone mixed field costs about $250, mainly due to the maintenance costs on it. And then there been talk about potential heat hazards on synthetic turf fields. So there was previous efforts for a synthetic turf field at the high school, and actually we're not recommending it, but the master plan suggested a synthetic turf field at the high school. And then there were also previous planning initiatives here in Westerly that proposed a synthetic turf field at the high school. The precedent is well established for the use of synthetic turf fields. Several communities have throughout New England and in the U.S. have synthetic turf fields. The system has performed well, given proper maintenance. It supports very heavy use, reduces the burden on other field assets. So if you can play on the synthetic turf field more, you can rest the other natural turf fields and be able to maintain them at a higher level. Without it, you would shift the use to other overburdened fields. But you would have to have a pledge to manage and monitor the installation of the synthetic turf field, and then also to maintain it. Another one on this end is that, yes, there is a replacement cost after 12 years or so. So a lot of communities are, I don't know what the term, banking money every year to anticipate the replacement costs, which can range from $400,000 to $500,000 a year. I mean, for the replacement. And a lot of the materials can be recycled. A lot of people think that synthetic turf fields just go in the garbage, but they are recycling almost 100% of the materials now. So these are the different type of infill options. So run by these. So chrome rubber isn't the only option. However, the first line is the rubbers and the plastics. The rubber materials have proven to have the best performance, the best resiliency. They stay in place better than other infills. The natural and organics, that's your coconut, your coconut and corn husks mixes. They're pretty prone to migration. They require a shock pad. And actually, a lot of people don't know this, is that you have to irrigate them. They have to maintain a certain moisture level in order for them to keep their resiliency. And actually, a lot of them have to be tested as much as everything else, because they contain pesticides, heavy metals, and the actual pesticides and heavy metals in the organic compounds are releasable. They would leach into the systems, where actually your rubber and your plastic materials do not leach at as high a level into the environment. And then there are minerals and coated materials. That's a sand. There's a plastic coated sand. They do stay in place really well. They do require a shock pad, but they can be abrasive. A lot of players on sand or coated sand fields have reported very severe abrasions after play. So these are, again, this is a chart of the different options. Chrome rubber is the first one at the top, and we use that as a base because that's actually no added cost if you're getting a regular. I can't blow up on the PowerPoint. I'm sorry, but we'll catch it.
Okay.
Okay.
I can always get you a copy of the presentations. We'll be putting it.
Yeah, we can.
Before I,
So the other rubber alternative is, so I was saying we use the estimated initial cost. We use crumb rubber as the base because that's your base system. All other alternative infills cost extra money. EPDM infill is a rubber infill. It actually performs as well as crumb rubber. However, it's considered raw or virgin material, so it comes at an added cost. So to a basic field that sits inside of a track that's about 90,000 square feet, that's an added cost of about $181,000. And actually, the rates on all of these are pretty much the same. The next option is coated silica sand infill. That's so that's where they take a mineral sand and they coat it with plastic. And that, again, is a $181,000 increase on a high school field. On a smaller, we did an example of another field that's about 75,000 square feet, and that's about $150,000 extra cost. Then you have your cork and coconut fibers. And again, I mentioned that these require higher levels of maintenance, and also they have to be irrigated. And then the last one is relatively new to the market. It's been out about 2 to 3 years. It's walnut shells, and it's basically ground up walnut shells, and then they actually braise it to keep any allergens sealed in the nut. And actually, according to the manufacturer, walnut shells are not an allergen to people who have nut allergies. Correct me if I'm wrong on that one, but that's what I was told. And that actually has a lower added cost of about $158,000. It's performed well. There may be 3 or 4 fields installed in the United States that I know of, and there's one down in New York on the Brooklyn Bridge Park. Whoop. So concerns about synthetic turf systems. The infill composition. There have mainly been concerns with crumb rubber and the amount of toxicity in the materials. Back in about 2016, there was a NBC report that had a lot of that was stating that soccer players in Washington State had a higher level of cancer because they were playing on synthetic turf fields. So that created a lot of uproar and a lot more research, actually, even into the crumb rubber. Now they actually, since then, Washington State did a study in response to this, and they found in their study that soccer players who play on synthetic turf fields in the state of Washington had a far lower instances of cancer than the general population. And then the next item is heat. People are concerned about heat on synthetic turf fields. However, most communities have been able to manage heat by keeping players off in hotter temperatures, and actually that should be a practice even on natural turf fields. So when temperatures get into the 90s, you just basically don't play on the fields at that time. And it's managed pretty well by several communities. Bacteria, when the fields first came out, there was reports that bacteria in the field was causing MRSA and staph infection. So again, they did research into this, and they really found that players were getting abrasions on the fields and things like that. However, they were getting the MRSA or the staph from athletic equipment or towels that weren't properly cleaned, or surfaces in the locker room. And then a study by Penn State University actually showed that there were higher levels of bacteria in natural grass fields than synthetic turf fields. The injury prevalence and abrasive qualities, that has actually, the abrasive qualities has been greatly reduced over the last 5 or 6 years. When the fields first came out, the plastics, mainly the plastics, were very abrasive, but they've really softened those up over the years. And then there's a perception that there are more injuries on synthetic turf fields, where in fact they actually are about the same on synthetic turf and on natural turf fields. They're just different. And actually what they're doing now, and it's Penn State again, they are doing research on the shoes that have been used, because I think what they found that when there have been a lot of injuries on synthetic turf fields, it's because the players are wearing improper cleats. So they're testing actually all different types of footwear on all different types of surfaces to really establish what the best footwear is to wear on each type of field, not just synthetic turf, but also on natural grass. The concerns of the maintenance, I mentioned before, is communities put in synthetic turf fields and they just think they can leave them, so they don't maintain them. The crumb rubber migrates out, they end up with not the proper depth, and people get injured from the lack of maintenance. And then also the fields wear out if you don't properly maintain them. And then infill and fiber migration. Some communities just don't like how the infill migrates into the buildings and so forth if they're close. So then we have an in-house toxicologist, and so she actually, as a lot of these conversations came up, she looked into this, and she performed her own study on crumb rubber, and she explained that the risk of exposure to crumb rubber is a mixture of exposure and toxicity. So if the toxicity levels there's a calculation between the toxicity levels contained in the material and the amount of exposure you get to it. And then there's the bioavailability of the chemicals in the synthetic turf field. So basically in the rubbers and in the fibers, if there are chemicals present, they are contained within the material and they're not really bioavailable to the human body. And then you analyze the different materials in the material, and then you look at the available data to determine the risks, if the risks are acceptable. So they end up with a calculation, and she did a comparison to applicable standards, so applicable health standards, whether you can eat the ingestion of crumb rubber particles, like how many you possibly would ingest, the dermal contact, that's contact with the skin, and then inhalation of chemicals from the fields, and then also the leaching of chemicals into groundwater. So those are the things that a lot of these studies have looked at, and then she also looked into these. So then, and if there's a proposed field, we would evaluate the data and collect it from the proposed materials. So all the materials that are put in would be tested in the same manner. So here are some comparisons, and actually all synthetic turf infill material, not just crumb rubber. It's an industry regulated, self-regulated requirement that they have to meet the ASTM standards for toy safety, both the European and the American standards. And so this is a list of, on the left is the detectable amounts of those materials in crumb rubber, and on the right are the the levels that are allowed by the toy safety standards. And you can see that the amount of material, the amount of metals are far less in the crumb rubber than are allowed in toy safety standards. And then again, she took a look at how they compare to native soils. So on the right is the soil background concentrations that are allowed in native soils, and the list on the left shows the maximum detected concentrations in crumb rubber. So you can see that they're all far less, with the exception of zinc. That's the evaluation through risk assessment. So Marie, our toxicologist, as well as a lot of the other researchers, took these calculations, and the results showed that the amount of risk is negligible. It's one in 1 million chances of getting sick or toxicity of the material. That's lower than your general environment, your risks in the general environment. So this is just the background. Maximum detected concentrations were used, so she used the maximum that you possibly could be in contact with. So the exposure through, so she did exposure through ingestion and dermal contact, and it's anticipating that you would ingest 100 milligrams of crumb rubber on each day of exposure. So it far exceeds what you actually would encounter in the actual environment. And it's assuming that crumb rubber would stick to your face, forearms, hands, and so forth, which it actually doesn't. Soil tends to stick to your body, but crumb rubber doesn't really stick to you. And then it assumes crumb rubber can be ingested like soil and adheres to the skin. So with that, I think we would open it up to questions and discussions.
Yeah, we're going to switch it up a little bit. So instead of using the microphone up here, we'll go around. We have 3 portable microphones, so I'll pass them along for questions, and I'll take it back after your questions, see if I can help with answers as well. If that's good with everybody? Okay. Any questions? Dan?
Hi, in the very first slide, there was one item that was optional. Can you say what that was about, the very first slide? It was one of the sub-layers.
The shock pad.
Yeah.
The shock pad's
Do you know
optional.
what that is?
The shock pad, if you go with one of the alternate materials, the shock pad is required for most of them. But it's optional on a crumb rubber or an EPDM field. A lot of communities are putting that in for an to increase the GMAX, and then it's also an insurance in case the maintenance isn't up to standards. Therefore, your field ends up meeting the requirements.
So a quick little response to that as well. The studies that I've looked at, a lot of the shift, whether it be a natural grass or any athletic field or athletic teams, a lot of the shift has been focused on concussions. So that shock absorber pad they're putting a lot of technology into that to create as little bounce, I guess, for lack of a better word, not being a scientist, less bounce to absorb those the head contact with the surface. So there's I think a company called Brock, and along that GMAX line, they make significant pads to decrease the likelihood of a concussion with contact. That makes sense.
I just wanted to ask, you say that when you install this turf that you have an ongoing plan for maintenance? Is that correct, Ed? Is that what they said? You have like a pledge to maintain? How does that work?
We don't have a proposal yet to which way
Yeah.
we're going to go, but if we do, everything will be factored in, whether it's a natural grass or a synthetic system, to be able to maintain it as well as possible. I think Gary Morano and his crew do a great job with what they have right now. But we can't just focus on the next year for that field. We need to try to extend the life of that field, whatever it may be, for as long as possible.
And the other question is, how much do we expend yearly to maintain the big field?
My estimate off of the last gathering all the information was between the quad and the high school and or Jerry Field was in the neighborhood of 65 to 75,000.
Really?
I just don't know if I don't have the data with me right now to say if that includes the water or not. I mean,
But that's your best estimate.
estimate on our current field right now,
Right.
I know for a fact is about $8,000 just in paint. Never
Okay.
mind the labor associated with it. But again, just round estimates. There is data online for us. So
Thank you.
right here's next.
Roughly, how long have high schools and communities been using synthetic fields? I realize colleges and universities have probably had them in place longer, but in New England or in Rhode Island, about how many years have they been in place? Thank you.
In Rhode Island, I would say 8 years, 7 or 8 years. In New England, maybe 15 years. And East Greenwich has a field, Johnston, Cranston, Middletown, Narragansett, Stonington, right, it's not Rhode Island, but that's right next door. And yeah, those are ones I know of. LaSalle, yeah, you get into the private school, Rogers, that's not, well, LaSalle. Barrington does not have one. They have natural turf field.
When you mentioned the numbers for the comparison per hour for the maintenance, did that include in the synthetic the actual cost of the equipment needed in order to maintain those fields when you determined the cost per hour?
Well, yes, it is. Inherently, it's included in there because you have the allowance per year for maintenance. But that's whether you would spend that amount whether you bought the equipment yourself and used your own manpower or you subcontracted it out. And that's calculated. And that also included the replacement cost of the synthetic turf field. So it was a 20-year analysis.
Yeah, I was hoping my son Brian would come here because he's the AD at Stonington and they've had this field over there for 3 years, but he will be here before the third meeting we get together. I'll kill him because he has all the statistics and facts about this. But I asked him once, how much do you put in your budget to maintain their field? And he says, we put in $2,500 and we usually give back $1,000. He says the only maintenance that they do is pick up things that get blown on the field. And once in a while, gum will get on the field. Okay, and that is probably the biggest hazard that he has to deal with. But he says, you know what? The janitor, his job is to go out there and just check for that. So the maintenance of that field, when you compare it to mowing and all those other things and not fertilizing them, it's ridiculous, the price difference between that and having a grass field. But I will definitely, hopefully, get him. I think he's probably at a soccer practice, with his kids, but I'll threaten him.
A couple things in regards to that real quick. We are looking, again, whichever way we go. Right now we have a lot of puddling up there. There's a lot of water up at the field. So we're trying to eliminate the puddling and drainage. We want to address that. Another thing with the synthetic turf field I've talked to numerous people about is you want to maintain it with a disinfectant. I don't know exactly how often, but we want to look at all those things so we can protect that field, protect our kids, protect whoever steps foot on the field as well. So either way that we go, we want to look at all those safety protocols.
Hi, I came this evening because I'm a physician and I'm particularly concerned about the health effects of crumb rubber, the exposure to crumb rubber over many years. I mean, some of these kids now get exposed to crumb rubber as infants as they go to watch other family members play on these fields and will have ongoing exposure for, many, many years. I've tried to educate myself in this topic over the past 4 years since the last referendum that we've had here that was voted down. I'm not against synthetic turf. I'm opposed to the use of crumb rubber as the infill for synthetic turf. And as you know, there was a cluster of cases of cancer that you alluded to at the reported from the University of Washington back in 2014, and the coach for that soccer team, whose name is Amy Griffin, has sort of become a repository for cases of cancer in athletes in whom there might be, there's a concern that their development of certain cancers might have been related to their exposure to crumb rubber as these athletes have been exposed over the length of their careers. And as of March of 2018, she's accumulated 250 cases that have been reported to her of 250 cases of cancer, people that have called to her that there might be some linkage between their cancers and the exposure to crumb rubber. So it's not a small issue, obviously. There is an ongoing study, there is an ongoing federal study that has linked the efforts of the Centers for Disease Control, the Environmental Protection Agency, and the Consumer Product Safety Commission that was initiated in February of 2016. And the results of that study are still to be reported. It's been over 2.5 years now, and I don't know when the results will be reported. But I guess my question is, with all this in mind, why should one take a chance in using crumb rubber as an infill in a playing field when there are these significant toxicity concerns?
So yes, actually on the EPA study, their initial report stated that they hadn't found anything yet in the research, and that's why they're still working on it. And then as far as Amy Griffin's, it was a concern, and that's why Washington State did that study, and they did end up acknowledging that, well, while 250 people, that sounds like a lot of people, but if you take that in consideration with the amount of people that play soccer, it was a minute amount, and it actually was a fraction of the amount they expected from the report, because the general population had far more instances of cancer than that ratio of soccer players with cancer to overall soccer players. But the the short answer to the question of why is crumb rubber has been the best material for use on synthetic turf fields. It's the most proven material. It has the best performance. It's been tested the most for actual playability and safety, and that's why most communities go forward with it. To the tune, it's about 99% of the communities across the country end up proceeding with crumb rubber fields. And some say, oh, it's because of the cost, but a lot of communities say, why should we spend another $180,000 when all these studies and test results indicate that it's generally safe? And that's the opportunity cost of what you use that money for. That could be a couple tennis courts. It could be some other facilities that the town may be lacking. So that's why they, don't justify spending that much more money on alternative infill. That's what we've observed.
I've been waiting for that EPA study to come out ever since you came to our public forum. And I look probably every 2 weeks, and it just keeps going and going and going. Listen, it's obviously, I don't know if it's necessarily a risk. It's out there. From what I've gathered, there's been no scientific data that proves there is or there isn't. The fact of the matter is every athlete's going to play on a crumb rubber surface in their, if they're playing football, if they're playing soccer, one time in their life they're going to play on a crumb rubber surface. They're going to play on natural grass. I would say it's very difficult to link everything together. Again, but I am not a scientist. I like the facts related to the toy. It kind of breaks it down and it makes it very simple for me. If you think of a young kid that's always chewing on those toys, and you think about the crumb rubber differences, and it seems significantly less. But again, I'm not a doctor, and I'm definitely not a scientist. So, go ahead.
Yeah, just one comment. I've looked at criticism of the studies that have been reported that claim no risk, and one of the criticisms is that they do not address the cumulative risk over an extended period of time. I mean, they may take a group of athletes or athletes that may play on different fields, and they look at toxins in their blood, et cetera, and the outcomes over a defined period, a year or so, but they don't look at the cumulative risk over a long period of time. One question that I have is in terms of the infill. I've been reading about an infill called thermoplastic elastomer. You didn't mention that.
TPE. Yes, it is one of the alternative infills. However,
Is that on the
no,
slide,
no,
the green
'cause
pellet?
actually, maybe we should have included it. They've just been having a lot of issues with it melting in the field, and if you don't get the exact recipe, if you will, for your climate, your temperature, it can literally melt, and then it ends up sticking together in the fibers.
I'm also a physician. I fully agree with Dr. Serra's comments and his concerns. If you look at an NFL video, you can see these clouds of black dust wafting up from the white sidelines whenever there's a pileup or people fall down. It's not that people are getting this stuff through their skin. They may be inhaling it if they're gasping for air. The studies are short-term. It took 300 years to prove that cigarettes cause lung cancer. It caused 20 years to prove that women who took diethylstilbestrol, their daughters got cervical cancer at age 20. So it can take a long time to really prove these things. Could the 250 cases of lymphoma in Washington State be data mining? Might be. Might just be a statistical aberration. But would you bet our kids' life on it? My feeling is that if we are going to go with synthetic turf, we ought to invest in a non-crumb rubber type of synthetic turf, something like the walnut potion that you talked about, something with no insecticides, something with no toxins, something with good performance. But if we can't find a surface that has good performance and utter safety, I would utterly share Dr. Serra's concerns and not subject our kids to a number of years of exposure that when they're 50 or so may turn out to be a very unpleasant surprise. I've seen too many things in medicine turn out badly after initial enthusiasm. So unless, there's one more thing. We aren't alone in our concerns. I think a substantial portion of Westerly's population, to some extent, shares these concerns about the uncertainty of crumb rubber. And that will be a sizable no vote. If you really want to pass synthetic turf, unlike last time when they shrugged off suggestions to have an alternative fill, I suggest you commit solidly for a non-crumb rubber infill. A little later, I'd like to make some comments about the general procedure, but that's my comment on this.
Just give me a second. So again, if hopefully no one assumes that I want to put any kid at risk. I mean, if you look at, and I'm not saying that anybody assumes that way, but if you look at the protocols, whether if you're a coach, there's so many heat protocols. We're going through certificates, concussion certificates and everything. The last thing we want to do is put any child, any person at risk, period. Now, again, do we have risks on a natural grass field? Yes. Do we have risks possibly on a synthetic turf? Yes. There's a lot of risks involved, period. There's fertilizer risks. Not every fertilized field is natural, so you do have the pellets. So there's definitely a lot of risks. I agree with you. This is exactly why I wanted to have this forum tonight, because I wanted to go over the options, whether it be crumb rubber, natural grass, or say even a coconut-based material. I wanted the public to know the options that we have moving forward so we can get these fields to where we need them to be. And, yes, sorry.
Do we know what infill is used over at Stonington on their field?
You do? You do? I'm pretty sure it's crumb rubber, but I'll just give me a second.
Yeah, I spoke to Mr. Marone over there, and he said it was a combination of crumb rubber and sand.
I've got two points. I read the master plan when it came out, and I agree. We need additional athletic fields in the town. But you gentlemen accurately, in my opinion, stated in your early comments that we're land poor. There's not a lot of extra space, and even if we get the extra space, you've always going to run into the issue: do the neighbors want the athletic fields? Do they want the additional traffic? We've run into that in the town before, also. But the question I've got, and I'll admit I'm not a smart guy, but the question I've got is: how is putting artificial turf on our Jerry Field in the quad going to reduce the amount of wear and tear on our other fields? Unless we're saying that the school committee is going to commit to opening up our Jerry Field in the quad through an MOU with the town to recreational use when it's not being used by the town. Is that what we're saying? Because I couldn't figure it out reading the plan.
No, so to quickly address that, right now, currently, the fall season, the high school boys soccer team and the high school girls soccer team practice after school at Gingerella Sports Complex. They have to find a ride to Gingerella Sports Complex or whatever the transportation needs are. If, and again, I'm not steering in one direction or another, if any proposal goes through and it's a synthetic turf, a system that can be used more regularly, a lot of those practices could be held at the high school. As far as me being an athlete, I love to play on our game field and practice on our game field because those are current conditions. So, but that would be the wear and tear that we're kind of associated with that, because every day for 3 hours, both of those teams are down there.
Well, you need to make this clear when you're making this presentation to the public, and you're saying it's going to really, you need to show clearly, unequivocally, how putting turf in is going to relieve the congestion on our other fields. To be very candid, a lot of people don't believe you. They're not seeing it. The master plan didn't clearly show that. So if you want this thing to sell in the town, you've got to make this clear. The second point is, you talked about safety. Well, I'd like to have these gentlemen state, how do they respond to the NFL's injury and safety panel study when they studied 9 years of injuries for NFL players, that the rate of injury between playing on turf and natural grass, there were 22% higher rate of knee injuries, 67% higher rate of ACL sprains, and 31% higher rate of ankle sprains.
With respect, I'd like to answer the follow-up question that you had for me, in that we do have data, specific data, and I will get you on when people practice specifically at each field. We did 3 public input sessions on that. We had multiple data coming in. There was a comprehensive report done about 3 or 4 years ago. The data is there. If you have any questions, I am happy to bring you to every practice without a doubt, but the data is definitely there. Just to make sure that we're on the same page, because we
This
did
is
go
rec
through that.
fields. This is for recreational sports.
For recreation as well as high school sports, correct.
Okay, I'd love to see it.
Okay,
Thank you.
go ahead, second question. Sorry. Just want to make sure I address it. Whoop. The NFL is a,
So that's what I mentioned earlier, that that's part of the reason they're doing those studies on, actually, they've attributed it to, from what I've heard, they've attributed it to the shoes that athletes have been wearing. I know, I was surprised too.
This is the NFL.
I was surprised also, and actually, colleges have shown up to fields and have the wrong shoes, and they end up losing games because they're falling all over the fields. I think there was a game in Arizona, a bowl game actually, where one of the teams showed up with incorrect shoes. But so that they are concentrating their studies on what are the proper shoes to wear on synthetic turf fields.
Yeah, Lou, you are a very thorough person. You always have been. I got a question for you. My granddaughter's in a car, and she's driving to practice for soccer down into White Rock, and they get in an accident, and she gets killed. Who's responsible for that accident? I mean, I'm not asking you, but I'm just saying in general. Who would be responsible? I would think the school board would hold a responsibility because they didn't provide a bus to bring the kids to practice every single day. And this happens day in and day out. And believe me, when I played sports, we didn't have all these other fancy sports, but that's how we got there. And it's not right that we're putting the kids in that position to get in your car and make sure you're down there by 3 o'clock. And that's what's happening. So I think the school board has got to either say, we're going to provide transportation to these other practice facilities, or you know what, cancel the sport. And I'm the last one to say that. Believe me, I would rather, you know what I mean? Hopefully you're getting a feeling for what could happen here. And we're very fortunate no one's gotten a serious accident. But how long are we going to wait? It's just like waiting for the right type of turf. How long are we going to wait? You know, like you say, I agree with you two gentlemen. And I wouldn't have said that a year ago. But you had some good points. I think I told you that. But no, you had some good points. That's something we got to consider. Transporting these kids to White Rock for their practice. These are high school kids, they're not recreation kids. Okay.
Mr. Marone, I cannot agree with you more. When I first got onto the school committee, the very first year, this is the one thing that I addressed with the superintendent. I was very concerned about students packing into cars and driving themselves to their practices. And for 1 year, I was at it, until I was finally told that they were going to provide transportation. This is what I was told. And I followed up with it. Oh, it's all taken care of. And then they say, well, the kids don't want to go on the bus. Well, they should not have a choice. It should be, if you have to go off campus from school, you need to take the bus. And it's a big liability to this town if something happens. My other point before you brought that up was I was going to touch upon something that Mr. Sposato was talking about, and that's injuries. I'm concerned about the number of injuries that are occurring on the natural turf. Okay, I'm very concerned about that. And I would like to see or hear from your son if the number of injuries decreased in Stonington from when students were playing on the natural turf to the synthetic. So that's a big concern of mine. And I don't know if Mr. Hay can address the injuries, and I know there have been students that have been hurt on that field because of the ruts and everything else that is there.
Thank you.
Oh, as far as injuries are concerned, so I don't have an exact number. I can ask the athletic director. I can ask the athletic director in Stonington, try to get some basis numbers where we are now and maybe where we're going to go with whatever field we go with. But what I do know is that I've seen multiple referees almost cancel playoff games because of the conditions of the field as well. So again, whatever direction we go, we just need to improve those two fields without a doubt.
I think just to reiterate, for anyone that hasn't had the opportunity to go to Stonington and actually walk on that field, I've been there within the last 2 weeks. My son plays over on that field, and I've also taken the opportunity to come over to our field here in Westerly. And I'll tell you, I can't understand at all how we would have less injuries here at all, because I've walked the field and I could see how people get tripped up easily with the condition that it is in currently, especially when we have this unpredictable weather that we've had lately, and the fact that we want to get these games in. Especially people are coming from other locations to try to play on these fields. This will be the third time that our baseball has been canceled because my son goes to a field out in West Warwick to play, and they turned around tonight in the third inning because they can't maintain the field. The home base is going to be underwater soon, not because of the rain, but because of the field conditions to begin with. There's a lot of things we have to address, and transportation has to come into play because we have to think about those things for our students. But mainly, go out on both fields, take a look at both fields. If it comes down to the infill, then we should really, we have many choices here to go with. We should really consider those choices, but I think synthetic really has solved a lot of problems for Stonington. So I encourage all of you to go and take a walk on both fields.
I would agree that it's more dangerous to play on a neglected natural turf field than it is a well-maintained synthetic field. But I think one of the things you and the school committee can do is commit to getting the drainage of that field, something that's been urged upon you for years and which has not been done. And if we put in a synthetic field, we're going to have to put in drainage. When they built the track a number of years ago, it acted like a dam, and ever since, water has not been able to drain. A previous council exhorted the athletic people to get the field drained. It hasn't been done. It's unfair to say that we should have synthetic turf because our neglected high school field is more dangerous. And if it is dangerous, you shouldn't play on it. I think it really bothers many of us to hear the people who run our athletic fields being told repeatedly to correct the drainage of the field, to have it neglected, and then have the advocates for synthetic turf turn around and point to its defects as a reason to put in synthetic turf. Do the drainage. One way or another, you're going to have to.
Yeah, so they've tried to address a little bit of the drainage. If you can tell on the quad side, there was this line with all these, they branched off a little bit. They tried to address it right there. The fact of the matter is, again, if we go with synthetic or natural, is that whole field needs to come up and we need to start from scratch. So what we were talking about earlier about the quality of that natural grass field, it all starts with the drainage, I think, and then you build up from the base. It's the same thing with a synthetic field. I mean, a synthetic field, if I'm not mistaken, takes at least 20 inches an hour or some. I don't know if you guys can chime in on that, if it's 20 inches an hour maybe or more, but just some different, we're talking about the drainage, obviously, so the drainage is very well. And same thing with the natural grass, if you rip that whole field apart and you get down to the base and you build back up, will it improve? Possibly. I just don't know that concrete answer is just the way that the track is set up and stuff, so.
Yes, one question about the drainage. What is the drainage of a synthetic field? Obviously, when you do something to the interface between soil and the air, and after a rainstorm or after a snowstorm and the snow melts, what happens? I don't understand where the water goes in a synthetic field.
It goes down through the system, and there's a stone drainage layer underneath it. And then in that, there's a tile drain. It's actually a flat 12-inch wide by 1-inch high panel drain. And then that's connected to a perimeter drain that collects the water and drains it off.
Okay, thank you.
There's different levels. Almost feel like I'm starting, not an expert, but in reading up, there is different levels of the turf. Some is very permeable, if I'm getting that right, so it really allows the water to seep through. There's different levels, obviously different costs as well, but if it does go to that point, we'll definitely look at all options that would allow the drainage to perform as best as possible.
If I could, on drainage too, just to add a little bit more flavor to this gentleman's comment. Whether it's a natural turf field or a synthetic turf field, if you want them to be high performing, they both should have pretty robust approaches to drainage below them. So I think the difference is, though, in fairness, is that if you want the natural turf field to perform at a much higher level, you're right. It has to have appropriate drainage. But even with appropriate drainage, what you're talking about being able to support is maybe 400 to 600 hours of use. Okay, even with proper drainage to maintain very first quality turf condition and to keep it performing at a high level and safe. And with a synthetic turf field, which also requires drainage, because of the makeup of that system, most communities are yielding 1,500 to 2,000 hours annually on that type of a field. So if you're able to program it to that level, you're able to accommodate many more activities on a synthetic turf field. So I also wanted to speak, and the last thing I would ever want to do as a landscape architect is to get into a debate about science with people from the medical profession. I feel like I'm a little bit out of my league there. But I will say, we've attempted to look at this in good faith, and we've had our environmental folks, we've had our toxicologists take a look at this. We're trying to work with the data that's available to us. I think our toxicologist in particular, she's really doing a risk assessment, and that considers exposure to crumb rubber over an extended period of time. And it's inhaling vapors, if that's a concern. It's ingesting, it's exposure. We're even, there are many communities that are actually even testing groundwater post-construction to identify any elevated levels of metals that are in groundwater. So there's a lot of folks that are making very good faith attempts to get to the bottom of this. There's tons of data. There's 100 studies that are out there. And we're doing the best to stay up to speed on all of this. There are alternative infill materials. There's no question about that. And one of the problems with some of the alternative infills was that there wasn't a lot of data about them because some of them are quite new. And there wasn't even data about how well they were performing from a safety perspective, how difficult they were to maintain. But there are a few types of infills that now have been in place a little bit longer, so they're developing a track record. So there are options other than crumb rubber. We've been in a position where we've tried to examine this in good faith. We've done due diligence. And for reasons of cost, performance, safety, maintenance, and what we understand to be the health considerations, we have been part of processes in many communities where they have resolved to the crumb rubber as an infill material after very careful thought and consideration. We're not trying to tell Westerly what to do, and I really appreciate the comments from these gentlemen, and I think that brings all of the different angles to bear for people to consider.
This is my last time I'm talking at this meeting.
The mic close.
A lot to say is, you remember 3 years ago, I put a lot of effort into doing what Ed did, and he's done such a better job. But I went up there when they did the perk test on Stonington's football field, and they got down to 5 feet, and they hit all the crushed up granite that came from the granite quarries when they quarried granite. So they couldn't get down any further to put any kind of system. So they used a wishbone system, you know, like this here. And that's only as good as the ground can take the water. But it was a solution. But they were up there pumping this field. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not a politician, Bill. That's why I'm not used to this stuff. And being a big mouth, usually I'm heard. But they, now you got me. I forgot what I was saying. But the wishbone system, they installed that, okay? And it worked for when we didn't have torrential rainfalls. But then, I mean, they're up there pumping the field getting ready for this past game. And right now, I'll tell you, go out there and walk around that area, and you know, it's mud. And this is nothing. Wait till the ground freezes and thaws and back and forth. You can't play on it. And you know, another thing that bothered me and other people from Westerly, my people from Westerly, guys I grew up with, why do we have to go over to Stonington and play them on their field because our field is not structured to play a football game? That really perturbed a lot of us alumni. And you wanted us to support something, and you can't even give us a field. I don't know about you guys. I know some of you guys. I know Diane forever. But that was really awful, I thought. And it's a good thing Brian said, you know, he gets along with Jamie. He said, yeah, come on over. We're not using it, you know. So that's it for me for tonight.
Did you want to go first?
I would, at the risk of stating the obvious, the fact of the matter is we have natural gas fields. And what I would suggest is that you have a pretty close discussion with the various coaches and talk to them specifically about what their recommendations are to enhance the fields for playing on the fields, the heavy playing on the field, and what they would like to see as part of the program. They're the ones who are dealing with it on an everyday basis. They understand maintenance or the lack thereof. They understand drainage or the lack thereof. They understand when turf needs to be brought in or not brought in. And I think we might find out something by going right in and having an opportunity to talk with the coaches and give them an opportunity to speak candidly. Not have to worry about the hierarchy of what they're dealing with in their various programs, but to encourage them to speak openly about what they would like to see in the fields and then factor that into your conclusions.
Without a doubt, and we have done that. I've talked to numerous coaches. I'm a coach myself, both recreation and up at the school now. And there are major considerations. The biggest consideration is the athletic director. So it becomes a scheduling nightmare when you have a rain cancellation. It's a nightmare because you have a JV team, a varsity team, another JV team, a varsity team, a JV team, a freshman team. There's every night it seems like there's something going on. So the scheduling is very difficult to find stuff. And find times in fields and everything like that. So it's been a pretty intense go about it and try to get a feel for our practices, where we practice every single day and try to eliminate the wear and tear there. What do? You try to rotate, but if it's wet, you got to have practice, you know, unless it's pouring rain out. So there's a lot of obstacles there. that we're just trying to make for a better program, you know? So I've definitely dug in. I've talked to other communities about it, other athletic directors, town in Narragansett. I was up there for a football game, and I ended up talking to the guy that was going through that, and he went through the same discussions we're having tonight. And eventually, they ended up putting it down. He says it's been a godsend for scheduling and everything. So there's definitely been a lot of consideration, and I will continue to do it as well, to talk to different people that we meet every single day, for sure. But thank you.
So one thing I just wanted to clarify is over the last couple of years, the town council and the school committee did work together to allocate monies to try to fix the drainage, as Ed said, at those fields. But what happens is we have only so many resources, both in monetarily and in personnel. So our guys in the Department of Public Works, they perform the labor. And as far as the school fields go, the school department provides the materials. So it's truly a partnership. And we've all been working together over the last couple of years. We know something needs to be done, but it's fine to criticize, but what people need to realize is that we just keep shoveling it out the door, and every time, for instance, the field looked beautiful in June, and then the football team gets out there, or the soccer team, and 2 weeks later, it looks just as bad as it did at the end of the prior season. So what we've been saying for years is we have to stop just throwing money away, because that's all we're doing. So this is about resource allocation as well. Thanks.
Yeah, so I like all the talks about the safety and piece of this, and I think we're all in agreement. Children's or anyone's using the field, safety is important. So we're focusing on the infill. I would like to know what type of maintenance plans are there for natural grass, and then the naturally organic maintaining a field is probably ideal, but probably more cost intensive. Using pesticides and fertilizers, which have known carcinogenics in them. Their material safety data sheets have that. It gets directly absorbed in the skin. There's studies after studies that show it gets into the groundwater. You know, what maintenance plans would be associated if they chose natural grass? And then what are the risks that are associated to our children that way versus the different infills? So, you know, toxicology studies can do projections on short-term data over long-term data. And are there any studies by the CDC or by your toxicologists that do that? In the pharmaceutical industry, that's what they do. They do short-term studies, project long-term risks in manufacturing and developing drugs. And then my next question, I'd like to know if there's any data to support. So my brother Brian's AD at Stonington, and some of the things he's seen there is that if you practice on grass and then play on synthetic turf, you get different muscle pulls and tears because the G factor and stuff is different. I think we need to consider that this is not just for the high school field, that whatever we choose for the high school field, we have to have the same type of field that we're going to practice on, which the majority of the student athletes are on the practice field. So we're talking about different sneakers and cleats and stuff like that. So it's like we're practicing on one type of field and playing on the other. So I think that needs to be considered, you know, when decision making occurs.
Thank you.
So, yeah, there have been, there's studies on natural grass also. And generally the fertilizers, you know, you're not supposed, you don't play on the field for 72 hours after it's fertilized. So it takes a little while for it to, you know, migrate down into the ground. And also the proper maintenance is to just put enough fertilizer on to, for the grass to uptake. So I'm not sure of the exposures or the risks. I don't have that information with me. What was the other part of the question?
You know, the application of pesticides and herbicides is really tightly restricted in most communities, and probably prohibited, actually, in most communities. So the maintaining of a natural turf field to a very high level of performance is through other means, organic fertilizers, and then the intelligent installation of those and keeping people off the field and so on and so forth. So I think, I'm not sure if that's speaking to your question about what does it take to keep a natural turf field up?
I'm reminded that when a reporter asked Joe Namath years ago which he liked better, grass or AstroTurf, his answer was, "I don't know, I've never smoked AstroTurf." At the risk of being further offensive, I'd just like to make a few observations. The bond issue for the synthetic turf was soundly beaten 2-1 4 years ago. And although I've seen online some people say it's just because people lied about it or a few disgruntled people were saying untruthful things, I really concluded that that 2-1 majority defeated it because they just didn't trust what they heard. And I would like to compliment you gentlemen on a much more straightforward and credible presentation than we had before. And I have just a few more observations if you can bear with me. I think in the past, 4 years ago, the people didn't trust the financial numbers. They had been through past school budgets, which some of them were not very honest. The communication was deceptive. There was a great resentment and cynicism on the part of the public about financial numbers. They didn't believe that the current fields were dangerous when we were choosing to play our kids on them, and when in fact we still weren't doing the proper drainage that a natural turf field should have had. They didn't believe that synthetic turf was a priority when we had neglected our roads and to some extent our pensions and had other things to spend money on. They didn't trust some of the advocates' claims that synthetic turf was, quote, good for business, end quote, and other types of stuff that just didn't make sense. They didn't trust that lots of accidents would occur on natural turf but not on synthetic, when in fact the medical literature, as you've explained, is pretty well 50-50, despite the NFL study that suggests synthetic might be more dangerous with certain types of shoes. So my exhortation to the advocates for synthetic turf, if you want to have it passed, I think you've done it so that you're going to have a vote in an off year when most of the public won't show up, but your fans will. You're going to have this bundled perhaps with other objects that people might like. Clever strategy. But if you really want to get it passed, you better be credible. And you better rid yourself of some of these people who just come out with these unbelievable assertions that people will not believe. You've got to be meticulous. You've got to provide provable stuff. The Washington State study, for example, the NFL study, any other unbiased study. With all respect, the short-term studies that your company will do can help protect you for due diligence, but I'm not so sure they're as good at long-term statistics as one might want to believe. Go through the charter-mandated proper financial impact statement this time well in advance by providing proper financial information to the Finance Committee and giving them the time to analyze it with all the different alternatives instead of like at the last minute when it was just done 10 days to 2 weeks before the election in violation of the Charter. We in Westerly get subject to bond issues from time to time and get pretty cynical. One inside lawyer presented a Misquamicut sewer issue whereby the 90% of the residents who generated 10% of the sewage would end up paying 90% of the cost, and the hotels that generated 90% of the sewage would pay 10%. So we're used to getting, shall we say, disingenuous information. So my exhortation recommendation again is be credible. Say things that you can back up. Don't say things that are indefensible. If you want to pass it, come out with more of the kind of data you have and even more than that. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Those comments were definitely well taken. So when we did our online survey, which we promised everybody we do, the whole, first of all, to go back a little bit, the big survey, not really survey, but the big plan that was done previous was in-depth, that people were passionate. But what is great about, I guess, the government side of things and how all the politics work is that people are concerned and asking questions. So what we wanted to do is exactly what you said. We wanted to listen. So the public information sessions in that open survey that we conducted for 3 or 4 months was to do that. From there, we gathered all that information, and people wanted more information. I promised to have this meeting tonight. It was supposed to be in the spring, but it ended up coming into the fall. But I wanted to have this meeting to get people informed, to bring out conversation, to bring out criticism, concerns. If we don't have the concerns, then people aren't doing their job as taxpayers, you know? So we want all these concerns out on the table so we can either try to address them in a positive or negative style manner. So we thank you very much. Thank you, guys. A couple quick comments from a couple of guests here. I'll let Bill talk real quick. Sorry.
Thanks, Ed. Yeah, Bill Aiello, I'm the liaison for the Recreation Board. And not just for you folks, but folks listening at home as well. But just a few points. And tonight was focused primarily on the natural turf and synthetic turf with the various infill components. But I just want to remind everybody, and no decisions have been made. I want to reassure everybody, whether or not we have an additional field, or 1.5 fields, I think they said, or synthetic, we do know that something needs to be done with our fields for good maintenance and the field surface conditions. How that happens is going to be up to a lot of heads coming together and the public weighing in. And I had to make some notes. I didn't want to get distracted. Just to remind everybody, the Westerly Rec Master Plan did cover the Gingerella Complex, Craig Field, Similary Field, the Westerly Middle School field, the high school field, and it also did a courtesy evaluation for the Pee Wee football field and Rotary Park. So there were several fields involved in this, and they looked at the field utilization, the conditions, the types of activities that are going on and that people want to occur, much of that based on the surveys that were done. And a lot of great input in some of the activities that these gentlemen mentioned. So all of that was taken into account. Things were looked at, the parking lots were looked at, lighting was looked at, drinking water fountains, the whole gamut was looked at. So we know something needs to be done. So I just wanted to refocus and say that tonight was on the turf and natural turf and synthetic, but the master plan itself is very all-encompassing. And how are we going to fund that? It could be bonding, it could be capital requests, it could be general operating, it could be donations. It's in the works, but we do need, I think everybody recognizes that something needs to be done with the fields. And just, we want to maximize the opportunities, and some other thoughts that were also brought out in the survey were multi-generational activities. It could be something as simple as putting in some walking trails at various fields that can accommodate it for various ages and families. We want to make sure that our facilities are ADA compliant. There are safety issues that need to be addressed. There's electrical, there's lighting, there's some bleachers. So the various safety issues that need to be addressed. So just to end, I wanted to say that personally, I think it was a very good discussion tonight, a lot of great questions, excellent presentation, and I hope Ed doesn't mind, but Ed Hake, the chairman of the rec board, and Paul Duffy, the rec department, contact them if you have further questions, and for the people at home. If you want to contact me, I will forward your questions to them, and we will hopefully get any questions that you have answered promptly as possible. And there are Facebook pages, Westerly Rec Master Plan and Westerly Rec. So thank you again.
Real last quick comment is I am very passionate about this, so please come with me anytime, emails. And I can't thank Mike and Jean enough for coming down, giving the town all their knowledge. It was fantastic, so a round of applause for them. And thank you to everybody listening online and everything. I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. I hate reading stuff. I had to cover everything. I'd rather just do it over the phone. Thank you so much for coming. And I didn't want you to forget. I tried to keep posting on Facebook.